Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for everyone supporting anyone going through the tween and teen years. I'm Rachel Richards, journalist, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters. Now, I don't know about you, but I sometimes find it hard to know what I should think about the online world, given the non-stop feed of information about harms done to our kids and the rise of AI. You know I like to take a positive approach to our journey as parents and keep our heads held high and believe that we can do good, but sometimes we have to talk about the bad stuff. Now, a while ago, I created an episode looking into why we need to really educate our kids about the cameras on their devices and why sending nudes, even to someone they trust, can open them up to abuse. I've also created an episode about grooming and sextortion. But I feel like the changes brought in by AI have fundamentally shifted the landscape, and we do need to understand what's happening for the sake of our kids. So who better to talk to about it than the organisation that is a world leader in removing illegal and abusive images from the internet, the Internet Watch Foundation. Along with Childline, they run the Report Remove service for anyone under 18 years old in the UK to anonymously report sexual images and videos of themselves on the internet and stop them from spreading. Emma Hardy, a director at the service, joins us today. Emma, thanks so much for being with us.
Really pleased to join you.
Yeah, and Emma's a mother too, so this is really, really helpful to us. Now, last year, you dealt with a record-breaking total of 312,000 reports of child abuse images in the UK, which was a 7% increase on the year before. What do these figures tell us about the online world our children are growing up in, especially compared to, like I was parenting young teens and tweens 5-10 years ago, and they're a bit older now. So for people who are starting to come through, what should we be thinking about this?
So everything I say now comes from my experience having worked at the IWF for almost 15 years, which is an incredibly long time to work in this area. And I can say that it feels like the problem is getting worse despite our best efforts. So that figure you gave, the 312,000, that is where we have received a report to our hotline filled with analysts that actually sit in Cambridge, and they have looked and they said, yes, we can see at least one or many images and videos that show the sexual abuse of children on that webpage. So the amount of content associated with each report could vastly exceed that 312,000. Yes. And this is content that we trace to being all over the world. So whilst we do this work in the UK, we work globally. So much of what we see is repeatedly shared over and over and over again. And our job is to try and stop that sharing, stop that imagery. And we are very good at what we do. When we find a child sexual abuse image or video, we can create from it something called a hash, which is simply a digital fingerprint. It's a string of code that relates only to that image. And that's an amazing thing to be able to do, because we have over 3 million such codes that equate to individual images and videos. And we supply those to tech companies and platforms. And when they use them, that can prevent that matching image from being uploaded. So if someone downloads that image and then they say, right, I'm going to upload it to this social media platform, let's just say that. I think they'd be a fool to try and do that, but let's just say someone's tried to do that. Then instantly the back end of that platform would see if it matches anything on that list, and if it does, it would stop it from being uploaded. And then, of course, there's a whole load of questions about what would happen to that person who had tried to upload it. But we can stop the repeated uploading of images like that, where a company works with us and takes that service that we're able to provide them. And we are really, really successful at getting tech companies to use that. But
Really?
The internet is huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yes.
And we only see a certain part of the internet.
So, and when we're talking about child sexual abuse, if it's a nude that a child has shared with somebody who's contacted them, would that qualify, or is that something completely different?
That would qualify as a child, but could potentially qualify as a child sexual abuse image. So I think there's lots of ways in which imagery could be gained from children and gained of children that's then shared. Let's start with a scenario where perhaps you've got a couple of teenagers. They're both under the age of 18. They're in a relationship. They trust each other. They have devices, and they're sharing nude imagery as part of their relationship. Technically speaking, that could well be child sexual abuse imagery. It might pass the criminal threshold, but for them, it's within a trusted relationship. Sometimes we find that imagery out in the wild on the open internet. And of course, that signals that somebody in that relationship wasn't very trustworthy and they've shared it
Yes.
outside that sphere of trust. And that does happen. And the way that that could be quite successfully dealt with is by that young person going to the report remove service that you've mentioned already, that we run in conjunction with NSPCC Childline. You would go to the Childline website. You can just type in report remove in Google and it will come straight up. That young person can submit the image or video or multiple images or videos, and it will come through to the analysts in our hotline in Cambridge. Now, our analysts in Cambridge don't know anything about that young person. All they know is it's come through report remove, and this is the image. Childline does have details about the person, but they can't see the imagery, but they can wrap that blanket of care around the child and offer them counselling services should they need it and give them that reassurance that they are doing the right thing. When it comes to us, we'll assess that image, like does it contravene UK law? And we can then do that system of creating a hash from it. So we can create that digital fingerprint. It goes on our list of digital fingerprints that go out to tech companies, and it will stop it from being uploaded to platforms where that list is deployed. So that is something that can give that teen that control, that sense of control back. Now, I want to come back to the issue of sextortion, which you mentioned earlier, having done a podcast on, because that is a really, really important tool for anyone in that scenario. The other thing that we've seen for many years, and we started tracking this really in about 2012, is the type of imagery that's created and captured where a child has no adult physically present in the room, but what that child has is a device. It could be a laptop, it could be a phone, it could be a tablet, a webcam, like I'm talking to you now. And that child needs to have a certain environment around them, so somewhere private. They might have another child, another sibling in the room with them, but it needs to be somewhere private. It's typically a bedroom or a bathroom, and somebody will contact them over the internet and will groom and coerce and encourage them into some kind of sexual activity. Now, somebody is capturing that along the way, whether it's the child, whether it's the offender on the other side of that camera. Doesn't matter who it is, but it's got into the wrong hands, that material has. And we found it, once it's gone onto the open internet, being shared quite often with people who have a sexual interest in children. It enters this marketplace. Now, we know from research that we did a few years back with Britain Thinks, we were asking young people and we were asking parents about this, and from what we can see of offenders and their conversations they're having online, there's a number of things going on here. So for that child or young person, they might think they're playing a game. Maybe they're a great dancer and they just want an audience to show off their dancing. Who doesn't remember doing that when they were young? Except
Absolutely.
they're being goaded into something where they might not be fully dressed. Or maybe they're good at gymnastics and they're asked to do a handstand, but, do a handstand wearing a skirt. And so very often things will be dressed up as a game. There's also predators, offenders, sexual abusers prey on this this popularity thing. I mean, we all want to feel popular. We all want to be liked. It's no different, regardless of how old you are. And the offenders will tell the young people, "Oh, you're so beautiful. Aren't you pretty?"
Yes.
Certain platforms will allow them to offer them gems or hearts. It makes them feel good. It's just reinforcing that feeling of affirmation. Who, when you're growing up, let's say you're 12 years old and you're starting to get these, you understand what it is to be popular and liked, and somebody is doing that and they're feeling that for you. And offenders know this and they prey on this. So you can see how it very, very quickly you can go from a scenario that's completely innocuous to a scenario all of a sudden where there's clothes being removed and topless pictures of genitals, for example, being shown because they're in following instructions. There's some videos, heartbreaking videos, where the child is going, "What? What's that? I don't understand. What's that word?" Because they're being asked to do things that they don't know what these things are. And then they're reading again. "Oh, okay, you mean like this." And they're responding back to somebody. But the environment is, you need the tech, you need some kind of camera that's capturing it, and the child needs to feel like they're in a private space when they're doing that.
Yes. Yes.
11 to 13-year-old children are most at risk. That's who we see most often in this type of imagery. But more and more, we are seeing the 7 to 10-year-olds coming up fast behind the 11 to
Ooh.
13s. So as parents, we have to think, and educators have to think, how do we help them when we're often incapable? We can't make a difference between how a platform is designed, and we
No.
can't influence the activities of a sexual offender or predator that we know nothing about. But what can we do as parents and carers in the family home? What can educators do to help our children in those scenarios to have that critical thinking? Because it's awful to say, but how do we help them pull up their defences when they might not even
Mm.
recognise what's going on? Because it feels like a game, it feels fun, they're getting this
Yeah.
adoration. That's pretty
Yes.
hard
Yeah.
to
It's very
talk
hard.
about.
And actually,
Yeah.
I did have an excellent conversation with a woman who's worked with offenders, and she has some excellent steps for understanding how they operate and what the flags are, which is incredibly helpful, because this is the difficulty, that they don't. Very often, it feels nice until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And your figures also show a big step up in AI abuse images.
Yeah.
Because what we've been talking about so far, which is really important and utterly critical, is textually different to what we're now starting to see, which is nudifying apps.
Yeah.
And, some parents wouldn't even understand what that is.
It feels like AI is everywhere,
Mm.
but generative AI tools, new technology has the ability to create child sexual abuse imagery without there needing to be a real living, breathing, physical child there. But that doesn't mean real children aren't involved. So we see how existing victims of sexual abuse or this type of imagery that's already circulating online, how AI can take the likeness of that child and place them into new scenarios. So we know that some sex offenders collect images of the same child, like you might collect football cards or whatever it is that you collect. But let's just say that child has never been seen in a sexual abuse image on the beach and they really want to see that. There are tools out there that will enable those people to be able to just, whatever they have in their head as a fantasy, you can type it, you can give it as an instruction to AI and it can create it. So you can create new material that shows children who are existing victims of sexual abuse. So their being a victim just continues in the imagery that lives on, that they might not have actually appeared in. Nudifying apps is a whole new thing altogether, and I think anyone who has any imagery of them online needs to be aware of this. And we saw this with Grok, XAI's chatbot at the beginning of the year. If there's a picture or image of you out there, it can be fed into a nudifying app or a nudifying tool, and you can be declothed. So what this means for children and young people, for example, is if there's a picture of them online anywhere, someone can take that picture, feed it through an app, and you can tell it to declothe, and the AI will imagine what that child's body looks like, or what your body looks like, or whoever it is. It won't be your body, but very often, why does that even matter? Because the shame, the humiliation is there. There's that power that person has to declothe you, to then use that image. If we come back to this idea of sexually coerced extortion or sextortion, I'll explain what that is, and then I'll explain how this comes together with nudifying apps and what we're seeing. So we are seeing more and more how boys are being made victims through somebody contacting them, perhaps a love interest, and they get talking and they share intimate imagery. So this is a teen boy, for example. That intimate image will be played back to him very soon afterwards with a threat written across his image, very often, something incredibly nasty. And it will say, I know your school, I know your social media contacts, because they've been sharing all this information in what they thought was what he thought was a trusted relationship. I will share this with your school and with these people unless you pay me $30, £100, $500, whatever it is that's being asked for. Now, we know that some boys have taken their own lives because of this. It's absolutely horrendous.
Heartbreaking.
This is where Report Remove comes in. It can almost act as an emergency service where it can come through. We prioritise those reports. We can give that young man the knowledge that we have done everything we can to stop that image from going anywhere, and he's done the right thing, and Childline can wrap their big arms around him and give him the support that he needs, which is great. When it comes to nudifying apps, it may well be that no image needs to have exchanged. You can just have a profile picture, but this app can declothe. This is we see this most often with girls' images rather than boys, because some of these nudifying apps, most of them are built to work on female bodies, not male bodies. So let's say you're a female teacher in a school, someone could put your image through it, and all of a sudden you've got a naked female teacher. Anyone whose images are out there. When it comes to girls, the girl doesn't have to exchange any intimate images. All there needs to be is one picture of them on the internet that's good enough quality picture that's fed through a nudifying app. And then all of a sudden, she can be blackmailed. And this happens. Typically, we see how offenders would blackmail girls for more imagery because there's this marketplace that actually generates money. Boys will be blackmailed for the money, straight for the money. And we've seen handbooks online that explain to people how they can do this. So coming back to how we have to think about it as parents, firstly, child is never to blame if they find themselves in this scenario. They've been a victim in some way. They are up against really organised people, adults who know exactly what they're doing, who know what buttons to press. So how do we ensure that we're having those correct conversations and doing what we can in the family home to help prepare our young people for whatever they may or may not, let's hope, face on the internet?
It sounds really dark. I mean, it sounds, as a parent, I listen to this and I think, God, do I need to get my kids to just take all their images down? Because it's quite upsetting, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually I ask myself a lot, as a parent, when you put your kids into a holiday club, and I just so it's a bit of context to my life, I have 2 children, they're both boys, they are 7 and 10 years old. And when they go into holiday clubs and you get this from school, you have this little tick box that says, can we take pictures of your child for marketing purposes? I find myself going, oh my God, what do I tick? I want to tick no, and I'm increasingly ticking no, you can't take pictures of my child. But I know full well, a couple of summers ago, my son came home and he said he felt, and I'm putting this word in his mouth, segregated, pulled aside from the rest of the group because he was the child, he's not allowed his picture taken, and therefore he felt like he was being punished for something. So there's a disconnect there with how this materializes in the setting children are in. But absolutely, I am really concerned about pictures of my children going online now. And I guess in some ways, being a public figurehead that talks about this, maybe I should be more concerned. Maybe I'm making myself a target in some way.
Well, I hope not. I mean, I do think what you've just said there plays into also the problems we have as parents when it comes to social media or any kind of connection with the internet and being online, because we're almost in a double bind that it's when you try and exclude your children to keep them safe, you then exclude them from all the other benefits. And it's almost like we don't have much choice about some of these things. I mean, we do ostensibly we can say no, but it does make it very difficult. And it's interesting because some people would justify the nudify apps or the creation of these images as, well, it's fake, so it's not really hurting anybody. What would be the impact on somebody of seeing images of themselves in these compromising situations?
I don't think there is any legitimate reason for these nudifying apps whatsoever. I can see how on one level, maybe in a bit of a lad culture from the 90s, if we could look at it like that, oh, it's just a joke, it's a bit of fun. But when these are actually targeting women, they work on women's bodies, they're being used for the purposes of bullying, humiliation, shaming, blackmail. Where is the room for a joke in that? And when you're talking about them being used to create illegal imagery, child sexual abuse imagery. There is no justification for these, and actually these tools are going to be banned. The government is changing the rules. These tools are going to be banned. I mean, there's lots of detail, I'm sure, to work through about how operationally that happens. But I think that's a good signal. That is a really good signal as a society that we will not tolerate. Yeah.
No. And so for parents, how can they talk about these risks without making their children feel frightened, having to constantly monitor them? What do we say?
Yeah, this is a really tough one. And actually, I think the what do we say will be different for every family environment, because no family is a carbon copy of another family. So maybe we'll just put that out there. We actually have some resources, and we also run some campaigns, which I'm feeling slightly lighter being able to talk about this because it's more lighthearted. I've said some really gloomy, horrendous stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, we can look at this in quite a fun way. And we try and do this at the Internet Watch Foundation. So we actually have a campaign that goes out to parents and it goes out to teens and educators, where we simply use fruit. Rude fruit. So it's like a peach that looks a little bit like a bottom, and it's a banana with a bit of cream on it. And I have to say, we got complaints about the banana from parents, but, and this is me getting my butt in first before anyone complains if they go and look at this, that was created by children and young people themselves. They co-created the banana with cream because it was funny. So anyway, we have some funny imagery, and we raise this issue of sharing of nudes. We use language like nudes. We don't need to talk about child sexual abuse. Nudes is absolutely fine. And that's a word that is typically used among young people.
Yes, they will use that. Yeah.
Yes, keep well away from the scary term like child sexual abuse. And it's the campaign is designed, when it comes to parents and carers, to get parents and carers to realise that these conversations need to be had. And actually we did some work with the International Policing and Public Protection Research Institute at Anglia Ruskin University. And what we discovered is good quality conversations within the family home, regardless of what the makeup of your family home is the best superpower that you have as a parent in order to keep your children safe online. Because you need to have that trust there. And if something goes wrong, the best thing you can do is establish yourself as a trusted adult to take that issue to, not to get angry. And in fact, a lot of our materials, the first message we give is don't get angry, because you could just think, oh my God, you stupid whatever, what have you done doing this, sending this image? Oh my goodness, when you actually realise that they've been groomed, coerced, encouraged, they've been flattered, there's all these tricks employed by the offender on the other side of the webcam. My gosh, give them a break a second. So good quality conversations. And you can start this with a little and often talk about what you like doing online. Don't go straight into child sexual abuse and nudes. Create an understanding that we can talk about stuff that happens online in the family home. And maybe while I'm sat down at dinner, I could just say something like, gosh, I saw something really funny on the internet today. It was this. Or, you know what? I saw this thing today when I was scrolling through Instagram. I don't know why, but it just unsettled me a little bit. What do you think? Do you ever see stuff on whatever, TikTok or, whatever the platform of choice is? Do you ever see stuff that makes you feel a bit unsettled as well? What do you think I should do about it? Because very often young people have a fairly good idea about what you should do. And if you see there's gaps, like, I don't know, I get my kids as young as they are, they have gamer names, we call it. Don't use your real name, you use a made up name, you have your gamer name. And I'll just emphasize, like, you don't give the real details about where you live ever. We don't share passwords. So I guess when you have this dialogue, look for where the gaps are. And can you just go, oh, you know what? It's a really good idea that you just don't share that level, because you never really know who anyone is. Or this is something that my kid said to me. Oh, I know when I'm in the kid area for this, whatever the game is, that it's only kids in there. And I was like, do you know that? I said, I wonder. It's like, how do you know that someone isn't a 40-year-old man just pretending that they're 10 years old? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, maybe you can't know that. Maybe we don't know actually that everybody is as young as you think they are. That does come back to our research from a few years ago, where one of the key things we found was there's a misguided belief among some young people that they put too much trust in the platform that they're using, that there is a barrier to stop older people getting in. And of course there isn't. There isn't.
No,
That doesn't exist. That's
no.
not a thing. Coming back to the conversation, we have a whole resource on this. If you go to talk.iwf.org.uk, or if there's a way that you can easily link from that for your
I will.
listeners.
It'll be in the podcast notes, yeah.
Perfect. You can download a resource that's had loads of research go into producing something that gives you little bite-sized tips. And actually, talk is a mnemonic. So talk about the things that your child likes on the internet. So you talk about the good, talk about the bad, good, bad, ugly. You know, we do this around the dinner table. What's your good, bad, ugly from today? To get the conversation going. Agree digital boundaries. How will you as a family agree you're going to use technology? There's an organisation called ChildNet who has this family agreement, which I think is a great way to approach this, where you agree as a family how you're going to use technology. So
I love that.
very much in my house, no digital devices upstairs. Because of that scenario I was saying about a digital device with a camera used in a private space. So we've already spoken about the risk of a child being able to have a private space with technology, with a webcam, if they are contacted by anybody online. You also don't know what's going on. So that's something that we certainly do, and I love the idea of an agreement. So agree how you use technology together as a family. Next is L, learn about the apps and the platforms that your child loves, which, my gosh, I know this can be really, really overwhelming, but there are some great guides out there. So you can go to the UK Safer Internet Centre website, or another organisation called Internet Matters has some fabulous guides to help you understand how to use those platforms that your child loves. So that you can have those conversations. Did you know you can turn off the location settings in Name Your App, for example? But if you know about those things, then you can have the conversations. And the K is to know how to use the tools and the settings. And the resource that's available goes through little conversation starters that you can have. And there's also a section in there for if you have a child with a special educational need, then how you could also approach that as well, because that's incredibly important.
Yes.
I think, though, you can't go far wrong if you just have little and often conversations and you take an interest. If the worst happens, you need them to know that you will be there for them and that they can come to you. They just need a trusted adult in their lives.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely brilliant advice. And the people I've spoken to who have children who have been impacted by this, each one of them thankfully went to their parent. One of them got caught out. He tried to pay the money, and then they demanded more because this is how they operate. And that's when he went to his parents, and he was just looked after. And the more we can have these conversations with our kids and prepare them, the more there's a speed bump in the road. Because I think the other thing that's interesting is I found this with drinking alcohol. Having those conversations beforehand helps your child have a script in their head that they can use as information. Because if you haven't laid down any foundations, they don't have a script to go to. They just have to make it up as they go along. And that's much harder to resist. So I love what you're saying.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I guess you just need to have that familiarity of this path I've trodden before in my mind or through conversation.
Yes. Professor Stephen Peters talks about it in The Chimp Paradox, or rather one of his other books, where he says we have a chimp, we have a human, and we have a computer. And what happens is the chimp always responds first, but the chimp will look in the computer first. The chimp is your kind of emotional side. And the best thing to do is to put something in that computer, so the chimp will look in the computer and go, oh yeah, no, my mum said don't ever send nudes. Or don't ever, and then they have to make a decision that would be against what they knew already would be the right thing. And that can happen. But at least they've had a something there that gives them some guidance. So yeah, it's brilliant. Is there anything else you'd like to say to parents?
The biggest piece of advice to parents is try not to get angry, or you can be angry, but just manage how that manifests on your face and in your words in that moment. Yes. That doesn't mean you can't go off and scream in a pillow or something, but for that young person, being calm, and helping them to feel in control is really important. And if you've done that little bit of thinking to go, I know there's report remove, I know there are people out there who can help with us, I know that you aren't at fault, even though I'm still bloody annoyed, keep that bit to yourself. I know you're not at fault. Then I guess it's rehearsing for a parent how you might react in that scenario. Maybe that's just as important as a parent. Think about how you would react and how you want to react, and try and live up to how you want to react.
That's great advice, Emma. I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us the time and really deep insights as a parent, because I think that does make a massive difference when we listen to someone who's also walking the same walk with us. I will put all the links in the podcast notes, because it's always good to know, I can go look there and I can get that. And I love all the resources that you shared as well. That's very, very helpful. So if you'd like to contact the Internet Watch Foundation, what's the best way?
I would say go to the website, which is iwf.org.uk, and you can find loads of information there, including contact details for different parts of the organisation.
Brilliant, thank you. And of course, Childline is another wonderful resource. And if you want to contact me, it's teenagersuntangled@gmail.com. I have a Substack where I do a lot of more writing, more sort of detailed analysis of the things that we've been talking about. And I also have PDF printout notes of the podcast, so that you've got a little checklist that can be helpful. That's teenagersuntangled.substack.com. That's it from me. Have a great week. Big hug. Bye-bye.